I'm not looking at you because I'm trying to do this at the same time, so bear with me. But talk to me a little bit. How many of you, what's your opinions or your thoughts or feelings regarding taking these types of tests? Or let me ask this question first. How many of you have taken some type of self-assessment before? Right? Whether it be like, I know I did one like in middle school, I was like, it told me I was a certain type of animal, like a lion or a dolphin or a beaver, you know, whatever it is. And then in high school I did something else, it told me my spiritual gifts or something else. And then obviously, how many for you, this is the first time you've taken strengths class, the test? Okay, quite a few of you. How many of you have taken it before? Brad, T? Just you two?
Yes.
You only two? How many of you have ever heard of it before? You've heard of it before. How did you hear about it? Is it one of your psychology classes here? In high school, okay?
You told me about it.
I told you about it, great. 1 second. Now, if I can just get this up and running, we're going to be great. Okay, great. Well, so talk to me a little bit. What do you think of the test? Because, right, I think I told you last week there's going to be some far extremes. One's going to say, I love to cook, or I'm really competitive, right? It's going to be some random questioning. So talk to me. You have 45 minutes or so to take the test. What did you think of the test? Interesting. Why interesting?
Because it was, like you said, it was hard to pick in between, and then I kind of got distracted, so I missed like 2 questions because, you know, it goes away in 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of agree with myself. Some stuff I don't, but, you know, I couldn't just actually read. I had to choose, so I felt like I was being rushed a little bit.
Sure. Good.
I feel like a lot of tests I've taken before have not been right on at all, and this one was definitely the strangest questions out of all of them, but I feel like it nailed me best, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty spot on for me. Something that I noticed while taking it was it asked a very similar question, but in a different way. Like towards the end, like they would come back to make sure to see if you kind of answered it either the same or different. I'm sure that's an assessment they would go through.
Great. Great observation. What are some other observations on taking the test?
I thought it was kind of quick in a way. Like you would think about a question and you'd choose one, like Sheena said, and then it'd come back later on, and you would really think about it again, and be like, "Am I really like this, or am I like the other one?" And like, it kind of makes you think about yourself in 2 different aspects.
Yeah. Brad, I heard you. I know what you think, but I'd love to hear it again. Tell everybody else what. You didn't like it.
It made me mad.
Yeah, tell me why.
Well, first off, I was told it was going to take like 15 minutes hot. That's a blatant lie.
Who told you that?
Mama.
Yeah, that's a lie. Okay.
And then I was getting really mad because it
You
was
can leave mine.
like answering those questions that were completely super off base from each other, and it got to the point where I got so frustrated with it, I just started having Josh answer them for me. What he thought was best fitted to me, and to be fair, it's pretty spot on, but it still made me pretty upset.
Okay. All right, well, with a lot of these type of self-assessment tests, there are certain people, and I'm assuming there's probably 1, maybe 2 within this class, that you despise these kinds of things. You hate the fact that you're put into a box. You hate the fact that somebody's telling you, or you're going to spell all these answers, all of a sudden they know everything about you, right? And you're like, this is annoying. I hate this kind of stuff. And that's okay. But tell me, you're taking a leadership class. The first thing we're doing is giving you what most of you are going to determine is a self-assessment. Why do you think we have you do this?
Know what our strengths, know what our weaknesses are.
Okay.
Well, so you know what, like, we're a team and we're supposed to be working together, so know what strengths and weaknesses are of other people so we can work together well and cohesively as a unit.
Okay, good. First one of things.
I mean, it gives us our strengths. It didn't really give me my weaknesses, so it's just like strengths of the entire team.
Mm-hmm.
And how would we be able to work together?
Okay, we'll come back to that next week, but I think a lot of you are kind of hitting on a point. You're saying, okay, I got my top 5 strengths. Why don't they give me the whole list of 34, right? You're saying, hey, I want the whole entire list. I want it in order. I want to know what I'm the absolute worst. How many of you asked that question? How many of you were like, you took the test and you're like, I want to know what number 34 is? Yeah? I did. Totally. I was like, I want to know where I'm weak so that I can do better. You're just telling me what I'm good at. That doesn't help me. right? So I'm empathy, I'm low, right? I'm really low, I'm not empathetic at all. Well, that doesn't help me. I need to learn and work on this. We'll touch base on that next week, okay? We're not going to get to it. But there's an interesting statistic that Gallup found with weaknesses that will help you in this understanding as well. This is not a self-assessment, okay? This is a little bit different. You're going to hear about other self-assessments like a Myers-Briggs, which in 2 weeks, Dr. Phil Douglas will come in here and he will tell you everything about the Myers-Briggs, down to the fact that he can probably figure out your family's Myers-Briggs, a town. He can give you, I can give you him a zip code anywhere in the United States and give him, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute and a half. He can tell me what the Myers-Briggs is for that one. He's over at Covenant Seminary. He remembers the Myers-Briggs of not only almost all the students in the last 20 years, but he can do their spouses. It's unbelievable at how much he knows about it. Now, there's a great thing about Dr. Douglas in that, and there's also a weakness. The beauty in that is that he can kind of tell you, okay, this is how that person functions. What I didn't like about that test, and what I liked about the strengths quest, you have a question?
Yeah, you kept saying, the Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, yes.
What is that?
That's another self-assessment you'll take in 2 weeks. Yeah, good question. The reason that I like the strengths quest, and I'm going to repeat that, is it gives you your top 5 strengths. Right? The Myers-Briggs is another self-assessment test that you'll take, and it basically breaks everybody down into 16 different categories. Now, I'm assuming, right, there's more than 16 different types of people in the world. Right? There's 16 different types of species of trees. Right? So there's obviously more than 16 different types of people in the world. And what Strengths Quest does is they've taken this 7 billion times or 7 million times. Anyways, in order for 2 people to have the exact same top 34 in the same order, it's like 1 in 3.4 billion or 3.4 million. I can't remember the exact number. Ultimately, what it's telling me is I'm a unique individual created by God in a very special way. And I have unique gifts and abilities that I can offer. That makes it special. And that's why I think Strengths Quest did a very, very good job of making sure that the assessment was right and doing it well. Now, what also is neat about it is that they have done a lot of research into this. And so for some of you that are input and intellection and learner, bear with me. I'm going to give you a little history and how they got to the point where they did. All right? And then after that, we'll do some activities. So the goals for today's session is to define talent, theme, strength, and engagement. Those are what we're going to try to define. We're going to discuss the role that talent and strength play in the success of top achievers. Identify and define in basic terms your own talents. So we're going to start to work with our own talents and strengths and talk about them. Discuss your themes of talents with others. Recognize the unique but different talents of others. And understand how strengths leads to engagement. So these are our goals. Okay, I'm going to try to get these done today in the next, I need to have a clock. Okay, in the next 45 minutes, we'll be good. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is, as a leader, one of the things that you had mentioned is we talked about our strengths and weaknesses as a group. When you leave this place, you become in the workforce, and you're going to be a leader within your, whatever it is, a business or a hospital, wherever you're doing, you want to know how other people function. You want to know what their strengths are. So beyond this class, it's really important to know how other people function, but also how yourself. One of the things I did, I worked in admissions. This was, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago or so. And we used a self-assessment for, even when I was on the phone, when I was recruiting high school seniors. And it was so interesting because I would call them and I would start asking them specific questions. And I could figure out their personality type just by some of the questions I would ask on the phone. And as a result, that changed my whole entire advertising. And so instead of telling them everything about the university that I was working for, I would just give them the little bit that they wanted to hear. So for example, there were certain moms or certain people that were really concerned about safety. And so I'd ask certain questions, whatever, and I didn't have to tell them about how great our athletic teams were. What I needed to focus in on was how safe our environment was. And so I'd tell them about public safety. I'd tell them about the dorms and how secure they are, and how there's an RA and an RD. I wouldn't even have to tell them much more than that, and they would want to know and go on to the next step in the process. It's so important for us to know ourselves, but also how we can relate and know others as well. So that's where strengths comes into play. So Chip Anderson, he's the founder of Strengths, one of the founders. 1976, for 36 years he had worked at UCLA, and if you know anything about UCLA, it's one of the top higher educational institutions in the United States. When it comes to higher education, they know everything and they know it well, okay? So he went to a conference in 1978, let me go back, and he had embraced the deficit remission educational model. Have any idea what that is? So his model of education was to tell you what you are awful at, and then make sure that you improve upon it before you move on to your next step, right? So, and we still use this model all over the United States. So you'd say, well, you are awful as a classroom at writing with cursive. Okay, we're going to spend an extra 2 weeks, and we're going to learn how to write cursive more effectively. That's the definition model, okay? Same thing with math. You guys can't get it, you're going to continue doing it over and over and over and over again. So in 1978, he went to a conference with ACT. You guys have all taken the ACT. And he met a guy by the name of Don Clifton. And Don Clifton changed his mindset because Chip Anderson had been studying why students were failing from education, why they were not making it from school. In 1978, 46% of students that had started school were not completing. And that number has still not changed today. So we can say 50% of anybody that starts college doesn't complete. And he was so concerned about that. So Don Clifton said, in order to produce excellence, you must study excellence. So instead of, Chip Anderson was studying the students that were failing and not making it through school, Don Clifton came in and said, you got to study the people that were doing well. So he started studying teachers and students and others who were doing well. He learned that there isn't a one-size-fits-all of learning or study techniques. So when you go to a class and they say, oh, if you just do this study technique, you can be successful. He learned that's not true. How many of you have ever found that? Have you ever taken a study techniques class? Or everybody talked to you about study techniques? Right? And how many of you have said, oh, that works really well for you, but that doesn't work for me? Is that true? Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everybody. I'm different in that way. I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I can read as much as I can, but if I can start to be active and be up and moving, I'm much more engaged in my work. In fact, I found that boys in general are much more like this. I taught elementary school, and I had a group of 6th graders, and we did a lesson on the Roman Empire. And I'm a much more active type of teacher. We're not doing it now, but we're going to be up and moving around. And what I found is all the students, all the girls had A's, B's, and C's at the beginning of the semester when I took over, and all the guys had C's, D's, and F's. By the end of the semester, because of my learning and my teaching style, it had completely flipped. And so guys just learn different, girls learn different, and I had to study that, and I'm learning that, and that's really had a big impact on how I do strengths. So they started to study the top achievers, and what they learned, they essentially learned that top achievers build their academic and personal lives and later their careers on their talents. They use those talents as a foundation for their strengths development, and they applied those strengths to produce excellence. They also manage any weaknesses, lesser talents, skills, or knowledge that can detract them from the performance or that of others. What they found is basically those people that are able to use their talents and to use them well to overcome their weaknesses or help others that can have those other types of strengths where they're weak, that's when they can produce excellence. So he believed that the key to a student's success was already in the student. Okay, so he's saying every student has the ability to be great. It's the figuring out how can we make them become great. So what they did is they took the top achievers and they studied them for 30 years. So get Apple, any company, any person, anything that had been successful, they did a huge, huge study on all these types of people. And they figured it out and they said, okay, what characteristics, what traits can we take away from them? They came up with 400 themes that they said this person has embraced and figured out how to use this and to become successful. Of those 400, they narrowed it down to the 34 most prevalent. Of those 34, when you guys took the test, they give you your top 5. So there's 34 talents, And the reason I'm using talent is because a talent is a naturally occurring pattern or thought, feeling or behavior that can be productively applied. Everything that you have, you guys do naturally, like breathing. You just do it. So for some of you that have empathy, I think a couple of you, I think Gladys had empathy, it was up there. She just does this naturally, right? It just flows out of her. This is just normal. I'm an achiever, okay? So what I like to do is I like to check mark boxes, right? So I get started my day, I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, this, and this. So I make a little box and I draw my thing. And by the end of the day, I need my check marks. And that's how I can be successful. Some of you need competition. I don't think actually anybody was in here was competitive. But you can learn that this is what I need to be successful, and that's how I function. Your talent just happens naturally. Knowledge, what you know as a result of either formal or informal education. This is what you're getting right now, right? This is when you're coming to school. So you have your talent plus your education plus a skill, so the basic ability to move through a fundamental step of a specific task. So, which leads to your strength, the ability to provide consistent, near-perfect performance on a specific task. So let's just take this very easily. A person who's a very successful nurse, right? They need knowledge, an informal or a formal education on how to bedside manner, how to give shots, how to do whatever it may be, right? To do stitches, right? Then they learn a skill to help students, to help their patient, right? So if they can take their talent, maybe they're very empathetic, they have the knowledge, they're book smart, and the skill on how to do stitches, that becomes a strength. And they will be very successful within the hospital. So it's a combination of all three of these that helps you give what we would call a strength. So right now, all of what you have is your top 5 talents, and I want to use that very specifically. So talent is the beginning of strength. Talent leads to higher levels of excellence, and talent helps you be more successful in performance repetitively and achieve excellence. So this is the basic format. You have your talent, a natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. Your investment, time practicing, developing your skills, along with building knowledge, your education, which leads to a strength. There are schools across the nation and organizations, churches, businesses that have embraced this model. So on your resume, a couple years from now, for some of you, like maybe a year from now, you would want to put your 5 strengths on that. You actually want to take your 5 strengths and incorporate them into your resume. Studies have found that when people are able to do that, they are way more likely to get a job. It's significantly higher. Organizations now are looking for people that have specific talents and that they have been able to make them into strengths. That's why it becomes very important that you know this. Not only what does strengths produce, so you're kind of saying, okay, I have this information, I have this knowledge, it becomes a strength, what does it produce? Essentially, when a person is utilizing his or her strength, it can produce an enormous amount of satisfaction and enhance the quality of a person's life. The people have found that when they are using their strengths in their job, and they're able to develop them, their quality of life in all aspects, financially, spiritually, socially, all are significantly higher than other people that have no idea about their strengths and are not able to use them. Would that be incentive enough to try to use them in your own will? Okay, so what happens is then, it came up to the 3 different terms as well. This is what strengths plus leads to, engagement. A person who's engaged, when they're using their strengths, they're engaged in their work. These kind of employees, or in this case students, are very loyal and productive. They're likely to stay with their company for at least a year. They're less likely to have accidents on the job or steal from the company. These are the type of students that never miss class. They like class, they do their assignments, they're loyal. These kinds of people, why are they doing that? Because in the classroom, the professor's engaged in his work, which allows you to be engaged in your work. The professor probably does things in his classroom that allows you to utilize your strengths, right? You probably had a class that you all probably can think of a class, right, in either elementary, high school, middle school, college, that you all loved. If you think about it for a long enough time, you can probably figure out is because he was able to tap into something in you that you were able to use your strengths. I mean, I can think back and I'm like, for me it was a math class, right? And there was different things that went on that I was able to use some of my competitive nature, my achieving, right? Those were things that and we moved. We didn't play around, we didn't talk all the time, we got things done. I'm an achiever, so I don't like to just chit-chat and and talk about my feelings or anything like that. I want to move. I want to get going here, people. So that's what made me engaged in the classroom. My assignments were worthwhile, they were productive, they weren't messing around. So that's why I was engaged. A person who's not using their strengths are probably going to be more not engaged. These employees may be productive, but they're not as psychologically connected to their company. They're more likely to miss work, leave company. In your case, they're not going to go to class. If your professor's not engaged in his work, are you going to want to go to class? No? If he's not changing up his teaching style or how you do assignments, are you going to be engaged? No. So you're going to less likely to go to class. Oh, I don't feel good, I'll happen to skip, right? That makes sense. I've been there. Now there's the opposite side, is that you're actively disengaged. These employees are physically present but psychologically absent. It means you might come to class but you're just not there. You don't care. You could care less about what happens. You're unhappy, you hate the class, which makes you unhappy with MOBAP, makes you unhappy all over. Right? These are people that are actively disengaged. I'll quick show this poll. These are with employees. Essentially, in a 2010 poll showed these type of overall, 28% of the world is engaged in their work. 50%, 53% not, 19% is actively disengaged. Over time, if a boss told an employee, or they were ignored, they just completely ignored them, right? 2% of them became still engaged in their work. 57% became not engaged, and 41% became actively disengaged. When a boss or a professor gave no feedback whatsoever, nothing. Now look at this. What if the professor or the boss said, you're absolutely horrible. You are the worst employee ever. I'm not going to fire you, but you're just awful, right? And you're so bad, I'm just going to make you do this, but you're just awful. Check this out. They became more engaged in their work. Why so? Why the dramatic change? 2% to 45%.
They wanted to change.
You want to change? What else?
Yeah, got feedback.
You got feedback. You didn't want to get fired. The big thing is they got feedback. They were at least being told they were awful. At least you're being ignored. Look what happens when people are starting to use their strengths quests. When they're starting to utilize their talents that became strengths, 61% became engaged in their work. 38% not engaged, and almost nobody was actively disengaged. It's a big deal, and I think I'm probably more passionate about it, obviously, than anybody else, because I'm here teaching you. But I think it's very worthwhile to know and figure out, hey, this is what's going on in my world, this is my life, how can I become engaged, and how can I use my talents? So here's the 34 finders, there are 44 themes. Okay, I'm done talking, I've done a lot today. So here's what I want you to do. We're going to be up and we're going to move it around. Hopefully you've taken your name tags. Let me go back. Does anybody have any questions on the overall information that I just gave to you? I know I went through it rather quickly. I don't want to bore you. But it is worthwhile. Okay? So for the next class period, the rest of today and the next week, we're going to get after it. We're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to play around with our themes. We're going to try to get to know everybody else's themes and how that plays out, and we're going to start to understand how things work together. By the end, maybe by next week, I can almost guarantee this might work. I can give you 3 strengths of a person, and if you do it well, we might be able to. You should be able to figure out what kind of car they drive.
I have a question. So on the 5 strengths we got on this line, are they ordered from our best to our 5th best? Or are they just random?
Yeah, sure. We can go with that. Yeah, you can. But I mean, the reason I say that is that there's going to be certain points in your life in which certain strengths might become more prevalent. But for the most part, these are your top 5. Okay. Okay. So does everybody have your name tags? Sure, you can put them on. That'll be helpful for the next activity. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to grab a partner. You can move around. You can stay where you're at. I want you to tell each other. Oh, I gotta give you some handouts. I want you to tell each other what your top 5 strengths are. All right? And I want you to look at this. What I have here is a piece of paper. It's got all the themes on it. Okay, so let's say Shannon. I'm going to look at Shannon, and she's got a discipline, maximizer, achiever, developer. Oh, I get developer as well. Oh, we're achiever. Wow, we're really same responsibility. We're friends. Okay, so I'm going to look at Shannon and be like, tell me about your top 5 talents, and she's going to say, I'm a maximizer. So she's going to look at this sheet, and she's going to say, according to this, it says that I have a strong focus on strengths as a way to stimulate personal and group excellence. And I like to seek to transform something from mediocre to superb, right? And then what I want Shannon to do is I want you to really condense it, and I want you to say, essentially that means I like to make things better, right? I'm a maximizer. Let's make it real short and sweet, okay? So, any questions about that? I want you to take all 5, and I want you to start to describe them to your partner. If you need to go in a group of 3, you can go in groups of 3 as well. Hopefully it works with 2. I got some harder copies.